Introduction. There's a kind of noise that doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. It's the quiet storm that rages behind your eyes when you lie awake at night, replaying every word you said that day, wondering if you sounded foolish. It's the endless debate in your mind before sending a simple text, the worry over decisions that haven't even been made, and the guilt over choices that are long gone. It's the constant need to analyze, predict, and prepare for every possible outcome, as though thinking more will somehow guarantee safety, control, or perfection. That noise is overthinking, and for many of us, it has become a way of life. Overthinking masquerades as intelligence. It convinces you that you're just being careful, that you're simply trying to do the right thing. You tell yourself that you're not overanalyzing. You're just being responsible. You're just trying to be better prepared. But beneath that facade lies a different truth. Overthinking is the mind's desperate attempt to avoid discomfort, uncertainty, and pain. It's not a sign of deep thinking. It's a symptom of fear. Most of us don't even realize when the line is crossed, when thinking turns into obsessing, when reflecting turns into replaying, and when preparation turns into paralysis. We wake up one day exhausted not because of what we did, but because of what we thought about doing. We are drained not by life itself, but by the stories our minds keep telling us about life. The tragedy of overthinking is that it doesn't stop bad things from happening. It only prevents you from enjoying the good ones. It keeps you trapped between a past you can't change and a future you can't control. You begin to live everywhere but here. You second-guess your instincts, doubt your worth, and distrust your own voice. You replay conversations until they lose all meaning and plan for scenarios that never happen. You become a prisoner inside your own mind, seeking freedom from thoughts that refuse to let go. This audiobook was written for you, the thinker who never stops thinking, the one who wants peace but doesn't know how to stop spiraling, the one who tries to control every detail, avoid every mistake, and predict every outcome, only to end up feeling powerless. I wrote this not as a distant teacher, but as someone who has lived inside that same mental storm, someone who has wrestled with endless what-ifs and should-haves. I understand how it feels to want silence, to crave the simplicity of just being, without analyzing every emotion and dissecting every experience. You are not broken. You're not weak. You're simply human, and your mind has been doing what it believes will protect you. Overthinking is the brain's survival mechanism gone rogue. It's how your mind tries to create certainty in an uncertain world. The good news is that it can be rewired, retrained, and calmed. You can learn to think deeply without drowning in your thoughts. You can learn to process emotions without being consumed by them. You can learn to stop trying to control everything and start trusting yourself again. This audiobook is a journey from mental chaos to clarity. It will help you recognize the roots of your overthinking, uncover the fears that fuel it, and give you practical tools to break the cycle. You'll learn to separate your thoughts from your identity, to pause before spiraling, and to find peace in the present moment. By the end, you'll no longer feel at war with your own mind. Instead, you'll experience what it truly means to live freely, to think clearly, and to move forward without being chained to constant worry. Let's begin the journey back to peace. Chapter 1. The silent chaos in your mind. There's a kind of chaos that no one can see. It doesn't take the form of loud arguments, slammed doors, or external drama. It lives quietly within the walls of your mind, subtle, invisible, and yet powerful enough to drain every ounce of peace from your soul. This chaos doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't explode outward. It implodes inward, looping thoughts over and over again until your energy is gone and your confidence begins to erode. That is the silent chaos of overthinking. Overthinking is not just thinking too much. It's an endless cycle of analysis that rarely leads to action. It's the mental habit of replaying conversations, dissecting choices, doubting yourself, and trying to predict every possible outcome of situations that haven't even happened yet. It feels productive in the moment. You convince yourself you're solving a problem, but most of the time, you're only making it bigger. Overthinking is like running on a treadmill. Your mind is in constant motion, but you're not getting anywhere. You end up exhausted and stuck in the same place. Contrary to what many believe, overthinking is not a sign of intelligence or depth. True intelligence involves clarity, perspective, and the ability to think through something and then release it. Overthinking, on the other hand, is a distortion of thinking. It's when your mental energy spirals out of control and begins to feed on itself. It's not deep thought, it's repetitive thought. It doesn't produce insight, it breeds anxiety. There's a fine line between reflection and rumination, and knowing the difference can change everything. Reflection is healthy. It's when you look back to learn, to understand, and to grow. Reflection has direction. It moves you forward. Rumination is different. It's when you get stuck in the past, reliving mistakes, replaying words, or rewriting what you wish you'd said. Rumination doesn't move you anywhere. It keeps you trapped in a loop. You think you're processing, but in truth, you're just reliving. Reflection is done with kindness and curiosity. Rumination is done with judgment and self-criticism. Reflection helps you heal. Rumination keeps the wound open. Overthinking often wears the mask of caution. It disguises itself as being careful, being smart, or being prepared. You tell yourself you're just thinking things through, just trying to make the best decision, just avoiding mistakes. But deep down, what's really happening is fear. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of regret, fear of the unknown. The mind cloaks that fear in the language of logic. You tell yourself, I'm just not ready yet, when what you really mean is, I'm scared to fail. You say, I'm weighing my options, when in truth, you're paralyzed by the possibility of choosing wrong. This is how overthinking deceives you. It convinces you that it's helping, when it's actually holding you hostage. It tells you that thinking more will lead to clarity, but clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. It tells you that you'll feel more confident once you've analyzed enough. But confidence doesn't grow in analysis. It grows in experience. Overthinking feeds on your desire for control, yet leaves you feeling more out of control than ever. The toll it takes on your mental, emotional, and physical health is immense. Mentally, your brain becomes cluttered with noise, too many thoughts competing for attention. It's like having 50 tabs open in your browser, all playing different sounds, none of which you can turn off. Emotionally, overthinking drains you. It amplifies anxiety, guilt, and regret while silencing joy and peace. You start to lose the ability to simply be present because your mind is always somewhere else, either in the past, trying to fix what's already gone, or in the future, worrying about what might happen next. Physically, overthinking manifests in tension, tight shoulders, headaches, restlessness, fatigue, even insomnia. Your body mirrors your mind. When your thoughts are chaotic, your heartbeat races, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles stay clenched. You begin to live in a constant state of fight or flight, as if danger is always near, even when you're sitting in the safety of your room. The body doesn't know that the threat is imaginary. It reacts as though every thought is real. In real life, overthinking sabotages more dreams than failure ever could. It stops people from applying for the job they want because they've already imagined every possible rejection. It keeps someone from confessing their feelings to someone they care about because they've already played out every awkward outcome in their head. It makes people delay starting projects, businesses, or creative pursuits because their minds convince them it's not the right time, that they're not ready, that they'll mess it up. Imagine a woman who has been offered a great opportunity at work, a promotion that would move her closer to her goals. Instead of celebrating, she spends the night wondering if she's truly qualified, worrying about how her colleagues will react, replaying past mistakes, and convincing herself she'll fail. By morning, her excitement is gone, replaced with dread. She turns down the opportunity, not because she can't do it, but because she's thought herself out of it. That's the power of overthinking. It kills possibilities before they even have a chance to breathe. Or think about the man who ends a promising relationship because his mind keeps analyzing every text, every silence, every look. He interprets pauses as problems, questions as criticisms, and affection as obligation. Eventually, the person he loves walks away, tired of being doubted. Later, he wonders what went wrong, never realizing that the relationship wasn't destroyed by a lack of love, but by the noise in his own head. Overthinking is self-sabotage disguised as self-protection. It keeps you busy but unproductive, thoughtful but indecisive, aware but anxious. It's the reason you replay every conversation after it ends, and the reason you can't fall asleep even when you're exhausted. It's why you apologize too much, hesitate too long, and settle too often. The chaos of overthinking doesn't announce itself with thunder. It creeps in quietly, one thought at a time, until it becomes the background music of your life. But here's the truth you need to remember. The thoughts in your head are not reality. They're interpretations. They are stories, often exaggerated by fear, doubt, and insecurity. The mind is a storyteller, and overthinking is what happens when you start believing every story it tells. The silence you crave is not outside you. It's within you, waiting beneath the noise. The key to peace isn't found in controlling every thought. It's in learning to see them for what they are and letting them go. This chapter marks the beginning of that journey. The journey from mental chaos to clarity, from noise to calm, from thinking endlessly to living fully. Chapter 2. The Root of the Noise. Why you overthink. Every storm begins somewhere. The thoughts that keep you awake at night, the endless loops of what ifs, and maybe I should have, didn't just appear out of nowhere. They were born out of fear, shaped by experience, and nurtured by a mind that learned, somewhere along the way, that safety comes from control. To understand how to silence the noise in your head, you must first understand where it comes from. Overthinking doesn't grow in a vacuum. It has roots, and those roots reach deep into your psychology, your past, and your need to feel secure in a world that rarely offers certainty. At the heart of overthinking lies fear, the most primal and persuasive emotion known to humankind. Fear whispers that you must be prepared for everything, that you can't afford to make a mistake, that you must keep thinking until you find the perfect solution. It convinces you that thinking more will protect you from pain. But fear is deceptive. What it really does is keep you trapped in constant vigilance, searching for danger, even when none exists. You begin to analyze every situation for hidden threats, every decision for possible regret, and every silence for unspoken disapproval. Fear turns the mind into a guard tower, always watching, always preparing, always imagining worst-case scenarios. Fear is deeply intertwined with control. When you overthink, what you're really trying to do is control the uncontrollable, people's opinions, the future, the outcome of decisions, the way life unfolds. The mind believes that if it just analyzes enough, plans enough, and predicts enough, it can eliminate uncertainty. But control is an illusion. The harder you try to control everything, the more anxious you become, because life resists control. The need to control comes from a place of deep insecurity, a fear that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But ironically, the act of trying to control every detail becomes the very thing that keeps you from feeling at peace. Perfectionism is another mask fear wears. It tells you that if you can just do everything perfectly, you'll finally be safe from judgment, failure, rejection, or shame. You become obsessed with getting things right, with avoiding mistakes, with appearing flawless in every aspect of life. But perfectionism isn't the pursuit of excellence. It's the fear of not being enough. It turns you into your own harshest critic, replaying every flaw, magnifying every imperfection, and holding you hostage to impossible standards. You don't rest because rest feels undeserved. You don't celebrate your wins because they never feel good enough. And in the constant pursuit of perfect, you lose the ability to appreciate good. Much of this begins in childhood, when your understanding of love and safety first takes shape. For many, the seeds of overthinking are planted early, by parents, teachers, or environments that rewarded achievement but punished mistakes. You might have learned that being wrong brought criticism, that failing led to shame, or that love had to be earned by performance. Over time, your young mind developed a defense mechanism. Think ahead, predict everything, and avoid mistakes at all costs. You learn to scan situations for danger, to anticipate disappointment, and to replay interactions to make sure you didn't do something wrong. The child who was afraid of being scolded becomes the adult who overanalyzes every word before sending a message. Then there's the fear of rejection, a wound so common and yet so deeply personal. As children, we are wired to seek belonging. When that belonging feels threatened, even slightly, it imprints something powerful in the mind. I must not mess up, or I'll lose love. So, we grow up overthinking every social interaction, trying to say the right thing, be the right person, fit into the right box. We develop an inner critic that constantly measures our worth through others' approval. The irony is that the more we try to avoid rejection through overthinking, the more disconnected we become from authenticity. And people can't truly love you for who you are if you're always performing to be accepted. The mind's obsession with certainty is another major root of overthinking. The brain evolved to protect us from danger, and one of its main tools is prediction. It constantly tries to forecast what will happen next, scanning for risks, preparing for threats. In prehistoric times, this mechanism kept us alive. But in the modern world, where the threats are emotional rather than physical, that same mechanism becomes a source of suffering. The brain craves certainty because it equates uncertainty with danger. But life itself is uncertain. Every attempt to find absolute certainty, whether through endless research, constant reassurance, or mental replay, only leads to more anxiety, because certainty is never fully attainable. This illusion of safety through certainty is one of the most powerful traps of overthinking. You think that if you can just think through every detail, you'll feel secure. But the opposite happens. The more you think, the more variables you uncover, and the less certain you feel. The mind spirals, trying to solve problems that don't exist yet, rehearsing conversations that may never happen, and worrying about scenarios that are entirely imaginary. What begins as an effort to feel safe ends up making you feel even more unsafe. For some people, the roots of overthinking go even deeper, into the soil of trauma and anxiety. When you've been through painful or unpredictable experiences, the mind learns to stay on high alert. It becomes hypervigilant, always scanning for danger, always preparing for the worst. Overthinking, in this context, is not just a bad habit. It's a survival strategy. The mind believes that by anticipating every possible outcome, it can prevent pain from happening again. But the brain doesn't distinguish between past and present. It reacts to thoughts as if they're happening right now. So even when you're safe, your body is living in defense mode, flooded with stress hormones and fear responses. Anxiety feeds the loop by amplifying uncertainty. It tells you that something bad might happen if you stop thinking about it. So you keep the thoughts running like a background process you can't turn off. It creates an illusion of control. As long as I think about it, I'm doing something. But over time, this constant vigilance becomes exhausting. You start to fear your own thoughts because they never stop. Then comes social comparison, the modern accelerant of overthinking. In the age of social media, it's easier than ever to feel inadequate. You scroll through curated versions of other people's lives and start wondering why yours doesn't look the same. Every achievement becomes a benchmark. Every success, a mirror reflecting your perceived shortcomings. You start to question your path, your pace, your worth. You begin to overthink your choices not because they're wrong, but because you've been conditioned to believe that everyone else is doing better. The comparison trap convinces you that you're behind, that you should have done more, that you're missing something. And so you think and think and think, trying to find the perfect way to catch up. But peace doesn't come from catching up. It comes from understanding yourself. That's why identifying your personal triggers is one of the most powerful steps toward breaking free. Maybe you overthink after being criticized because it reminds you of being judged as a child. Maybe you spiral when you feel ignored because your mind equates silence with rejection. Maybe uncertainty triggers you because it makes you feel helpless. Every overthinking episode is a clue, a breadcrumb leading back to the root of your fear. The next time you catch yourself replaying a moment or predicting an outcome, pause and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? You might find that it's not the situation itself. It's the feeling underneath it. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing control. Fear of being hurt again. Once you name it, you can face it. Overthinking isn't the enemy. It's a signal. It's your mind's way of telling you that something deeper needs attention. The real work begins when you stop fighting your thoughts and start listening to what they're trying to protect you from. Because beneath the noise, beneath the fear and the need for control, lies something tender and human, a longing to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel enough. And once you understand that, the storm in your mind begins to lose its power. You start to realize that peace doesn't come from over-preparing for life. It comes from trusting that you can handle it as it comes. Chapter 3. The Analysis Trap. How the Mind Tricks You. The mind is a brilliant storyteller. It can weave logic and imagination so seamlessly that you begin to believe every word it tells you. It convinces you that thinking more means doing more, that analyzing a problem deeply will somehow bring relief, that if you just keep turning a thought over in your head long enough, you'll find the perfect solution. But what if the opposite is true? What if the very act of trying to think your way to peace is the reason you can't find it? This is the paradox of overthinking, the analysis trap. It's where you get stuck believing that more thought equals more control, when in reality, more thought equals more confusion. The trap often begins with a single thought. What if? Two small words that seem harmless at first, but have the power to hijack your peace and steer your mind into endless uncertainty. What if I fail? What if they don't like me? What if I make the wrong choice? What if something goes wrong? Each question opens the door to a flood of possibilities, most of which never come true. The mind begins to chase those possibilities, analyzing each one as if preparing for battle. Before long, you're no longer thinking, you're catastrophizing. You're imagining 10 different futures, rehearsing for disasters that may never happen, and trying to find comfort in scenarios that only exist inside your imagination. What if thoughts are persuasive because they masquerade as caution? They make you feel responsible, as if you're doing something wise by preparing for every possible outcome. But the truth is, what if thoughts rarely help you prepare? They only help you worry. They take you away from the present moment and plunge you into hypothetical worlds that feel real but aren't. And because the brain reacts to imagination almost the same way it reacts to reality, your body experiences stress, anxiety, and fear for events that don't even exist. You suffer twice, once in your imagination and again in your body. The more you feed these thoughts, the harder it becomes to make decisions. Overthinking creates the illusion that more analysis leads to better choices, but it actually leads to paralysis. You weigh every option until they all start to blur together. You gather more information, ask for more opinions, wait for more signs. Days pass, opportunities slip away, and your confidence fades. You tell yourself you're being careful, but deep down, you know you're afraid. You're afraid of being wrong, afraid of regret, afraid of facing the unknown. So you stay stuck, trapped not by circumstance, but by your own mind. This is where procrastination quietly enters the picture. Most people think procrastination is a problem of laziness or poor discipline, but in truth, it's often a symptom of overthinking. When your mind is overwhelmed with options, details, and potential outcomes, action feels impossible. You spend so much time analyzing what could go wrong that you never get around to doing anything. You become addicted to the safety of planning, telling yourself that once you figure it all out, you'll finally move forward. But that moment never comes, because the mind keeps creating new doubts, new questions, new scenarios to analyze. Procrastination offers temporary relief. When you avoid action, you escape the discomfort of uncertainty. You feel safe for a while because you've postponed the risk of failure or rejection. But that safety doesn't last. The longer you delay, the heavier the task feels, and the more guilt and anxiety build up. You end up in a self-perpetuating loop, thinking so much that you can't act, then feeling so bad about not acting that you think even more. The trap tightens until you're caught between exhaustion and shame. Another trick the mind plays is emotional reasoning. The belief that your feelings are facts. When you overthink, emotions often take the driver's seat, even when you believe you're being rational. You might think, I feel anxious about this decision, so it must be the wrong one. Or, I feel unworthy, so I must not be good enough. The mind confuses emotional discomfort with objective truth. But feelings are not facts, they are signals. They tell you how you're experiencing something, not necessarily what that thing is. When you let emotions dictate your thoughts, you end up building entire stories on unstable ground. You can't think your way out of emotions because emotions are not problems to be solved. They're experiences to be felt. The more you try to analyze them, the deeper you sink into them. Imagine trying to untangle a knot by pulling every thread tighter. That's what happens when you overthink your feelings. Healing doesn't come from dissecting every emotion, but from allowing it to pass through you without judgment. Sometimes the most rational thing you can do is simply feel what you feel and trust that it will fade. One of the mind's favorite illusions is the false comfort of mental replay. How many times have you caught yourself reliving a moment that's already over? An argument, a conversation, a mistake, wishing you could go back and do it differently. You play it over and over, rewriting your lines, rehearsing your reactions, searching for a sense of closure that never comes. It feels productive, as if you're processing the situation, but what you're really doing is feeding regret. You can't change the past, but your mind keeps pretending that if you analyze it long enough, maybe you'll find a way to. The same happens with imaginary arguments. Those mental debates you have with people who aren't even there. You imagine what they'd say, how you'd respond, how you'd finally win. It feels empowering for a moment, but afterward, you're left drained, angry, and restless. You've spent energy fighting ghosts. These rehearsed arguments don't give you power. They steal it. They keep you emotionally attached to conflicts that have already passed or may never happen at all. Why does the mind do this? Because thinking feels safer than feeling. Replaying a painful moment gives you the illusion of control over it. Arguing in your head makes you feel prepared. But these are mental tricks, safety illusions that only prolong your suffering. You end up tethered to moments that don't exist anymore, unable to move forward because your mind refuses to stop reliving what's already gone. To break free from the analysis trap, you must first recognize your mental patterns. Every overthinker has a signature pattern, a predictable route the mind takes when it feels unsafe. Some spiral into what-ifs. Others replay the past. Some seek endless reassurance from others. Some research everything, unable to rest until they've found the perfect answer. These patterns often begin as coping mechanisms, but over time, they become prisons. The key is awareness. The moment you notice your mind drifting into overanalysis, pause and observe without judgment. Don't fight the thought. Name it. This is my mind trying to protect me again. When you name the pattern, you weaken its power. You step out of identification and into observation. From that place, you can choose differently. You can choose to act instead of analyze, to feel instead of fix, to let go instead of replay. Your escape routes from overthinking are not about silencing the mind, but redirecting it. Sometimes the best way to clear mental fog is through physical action, taking a walk, journaling, doing something simple and grounding. Movement interrupts the loop. Other times, it's about embracing uncertainty, reminding yourself that not every question needs an answer, and not every outcome needs control. The truth is, the mind doesn't want peace, it wants certainty. But certainty is not peace. It's just another form of control. Real peace comes when you stop demanding that every thought makes sense and every decision guarantees safety. It comes when you learn to live with the unknown and trust yourself enough to move forward anyway. The analysis trap is seductive because it feels like progress. It feels like you're doing something important when you're really just circling the same thoughts. But the moment you see the trap for what it is, a mind trying to think its way out of fear, you begin to find freedom. You begin to realize that clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from quieting the noise, feeling what's real, and taking one imperfect step forward at a time. Because sometimes the wisest thing you can do is stop asking, what if, and simply say, let's see. Chapter 4. The Art of Letting Go. There comes a point in every overthinker's life when you realize the problem isn't just the noise in your head, it's your attachment to it. You keep trying to control your thoughts, your emotions, the outcomes of every situation, and the way people perceive you. You replay the past as if you could rewrite it, and you worry about the future as if your anxiety could shape it. But control is a mirage, a shimmering promise that disappears the closer you get to it. You think that if you can control enough, plan enough, think enough, you can make life behave. Yet life refuses to be controlled. It moves, shifts, and surprises, no matter how tight your grip. Letting go is not about giving up. It's about understanding that control was never really yours to begin with. You can influence outcomes, but you can't guarantee them. You can prepare for the future, but you can't predict it. You can love people deeply, but you can't make them love you the same way. When you truly see that, something inside you softens. The tension you've been carrying, the constant need to steer everything, begins to loosen. Letting go is not weakness. It's the ultimate act of strength. It takes immense courage to stop fighting with life and start flowing with it. The desire to control comes from fear. Fear of being hurt, of losing something important, of feeling powerless. Control is the mind's way of saying, if I can manage everything perfectly, I'll never have to feel pain again. But life doesn't work that way. No amount of control can stop disappointment, heartbreak, or uncertainty. The more you try to avoid pain, the more you end up creating it. Because the act of clinging itself becomes suffering. Like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. Surrender, on the other hand, is not defeat, it's freedom. It's the quiet acceptance that you don't need to have all the answers, that it's okay for life to unfold without your constant supervision. Surrender means choosing peace over control, presence over prediction. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop forcing. It means doing your best and releasing the rest. When you stop trying to direct every scene of your life, you give space for things to happen as they should. Often, what comes naturally is far better than anything you could have planned. This is where the most profound mindset shift takes place. The move from outcome obsession to process trust. Most people live in the future, obsessed with results. They set goals, make plans, and hinge their happiness on whether things turn out a certain way. But life doesn't move in straight lines. It moves in spirals, detours, and lessons. When you obsess over outcomes, you miss the beauty of the journey. You become so fixated on the finish line that you forget to experience the race. Trusting the process means believing that every step, even the uncertain, messy, painful ones, has a purpose. It's trusting that things are unfolding in ways you may not yet understand. It's replacing the question, what if it doesn't work out, with what if it's working out in ways I can't see yet. Trust is the bridge between your effort and life's timing. You can't see the entire path, but you can take the next step. The process is where growth happens, where character is shaped, resilience is built, and peace is found. Learning to detach from your thoughts is one of the most powerful ways to practice letting go. Most people believe their thoughts are facts, but they're not. They're just mental events passing through consciousness. The problem isn't that you think too much. It's that you believe every thought that appears. You identify with them as my thoughts, when in truth, they're just stories your brain creates to make sense of the world. Detachment doesn't mean you stop thinking. It means you stop believing everything you think. Imagine watching clouds drift across the sky. You don't try to chase or stop them. You just notice them passing by. That's what detachment looks like. When a thought arises, I'm not good enough. What if I fail? They must be disappointed in me. Instead of arguing with it, you simply say, there's that thought again, and let it pass. Fighting thoughts only gives them more power. Observing them takes their power away. The mind feeds on resistance. The moment you stop resisting, it quiets down. A practical way to begin this is through mindfulness. When your mind starts racing, pause and bring your attention to something real and present. Your breath, your heartbeat, the feeling of your feet on the ground. Anchor yourself in your body. Notice your thoughts without judging them. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back. Every time you do this, you're teaching your brain that it doesn't have to chase every thought it produces. Over time, this practice creates space between you and your thoughts, a space where peace can enter. Acceptance is another cornerstone of letting go. Acceptance doesn't mean liking what's happening or giving up on change. It means acknowledging reality as it is right now. When you resist what is, you suffer twice, first from the situation itself, and then from the story you tell about it. Acceptance removes that second layer of suffering. It's saying, this is what's happening, and I'll meet it as it is. From that place, you can respond with clarity instead of reacting from panic. There are simple exercises that help cultivate acceptance and mental release. One is the 3 breaths of letting go. When you feel overwhelmed, stop and take 3 slow, deliberate breaths. On the first breath, acknowledge what you're holding on to: fear, anger, control, anxiety. On the second, imagine exhaling it out of your body. On the third, breathe in openness and peace. It sounds simple, but the act of pausing and breathing reminds your nervous system that it's safe to let go. Another exercise is writing. Journaling is a powerful release valve for the overactive mind. When you write down your thoughts, you pull them out of the mental loop and place them where you can see them. The page holds them for you, so you don't have to. Sometimes, writing a letting go letter to a person, a situation, or even an old version of yourself can bring tremendous peace. You don't have to send it. The act of writing is enough to release the emotional weight you've been carrying. Letting go also means learning to live with uncertainty. The truth is, uncertainty is not the enemy. It's the very fabric of life. Every moment is uncertain, every breath unpredictable. Yet, that's what makes life rich and alive. When you try to eliminate uncertainty, you also eliminate possibility. The same unknown that holds your fears also holds your miracles. When you learn to be comfortable with not knowing, you open yourself to wonder. To live calmly in uncertainty, practice shifting from needing to know to being willing to discover. Approach life with curiosity instead of fear. Instead of saying, "I don't know what will happen," try saying, "I'm excited to see what happens." Curiosity is a soft form of courage. It replaces dread with openness. It reminds you that you've survived every uncertain moment up to this one, and you will survive the next. Confidence in uncertainty doesn't come from knowing what will happen. It comes from trusting that you'll handle it when it does. You've faced difficult moments before and made it through them. You've adapted, learned, healed, and grown. Every challenge you've ever faced has proven that you are capable. The same strength that carried you then will carry you again. Letting go is not a single act. It's a daily practice. You let go of expectations in the morning and control in the afternoon. You let go of worry before bed and overanalysis in the silence of the night. You remind yourself, again and again, that peace is not something you find by holding on. It's something you experience by releasing. When you finally learn the art of letting go, life begins to breathe again. You stop fighting every current and start flowing with it. You stop demanding that life makes sense and start trusting that it has meaning. And in that surrender, you find something far greater than control. You find freedom. The kind of freedom that comes from knowing you don't have to force anything, fix everything, or figure it all out. You just have to be here, now, open, calm, and unafraid. Because sometimes the greatest act of strength is not in holding on, but in finally letting go. Chapter 5. Training your brain for clarity. Peace doesn't come naturally to an overactive mind. It must be trained. The brain, when left unattended, will always drift toward chaos, analysis, and noise. It's not because you're broken or weak. It's because your mind was designed to think, to analyze, to predict. But when that natural process goes unchecked, it becomes like a wild horse. Fast, powerful, but directionless. Clarity is not something that just happens. It's something you cultivate. It's the art of training your brain to slow down, focus, and choose peace even when chaos is knocking. The first step to building clarity is awareness. You cannot change what you are unaware of. Most of the time, overthinking happens automatically. You get caught in a storm of thoughts before you even realize it's begun. Mindfulness is the practice of catching the storm in its early stages. It's the skill of noticing your thoughts as they arise, without judgment or reaction. When you become mindful, you begin to see that your thoughts are just thoughts, passing clouds in the vast sky of your mind, not absolute truths that demand your attention. Mindfulness isn't about emptying your mind. It's about becoming conscious of it. It means paying attention to the present moment with gentle curiosity. You can practice mindfulness anywhere, while washing dishes, walking, breathing, or even waiting in traffic. It's simply the act of noticing. You might catch yourself thinking about something that happened yesterday, or worrying about what's coming tomorrow. Instead of getting lost in it, you softly remind yourself, "I'm thinking." That small acknowledgement pulls you out of the thought and back into awareness. Over time, mindfulness trains your brain to pause before reacting, to see thoughts as events in the mind rather than commands you must obey. One of the simplest and most powerful mindfulness tools is what psychologists call the pause and label method. It's exactly what it sounds like, a momentary pause in which you recognize what's happening in your mind and give it a name. For instance, when you find yourself spiraling, replaying an old argument or worrying about a future decision, you stop for a few seconds and mentally label it. This is worry. This is rumination. This is fear. The act of labeling does something remarkable. It shifts you from being inside the thought to observing it from the outside. You move from identification to awareness, from chaos to clarity. Labeling also activates a different part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and control, which quiets the emotional centers that drive overthinking. It's like switching from automatic mode to manual. Once you name what's happening, you create space between yourself and the thought. You don't have to fight it or suppress it. You just see it for what it is and let it pass. The more you practice this, the quicker you become at catching yourself before a spiral begins. But awareness alone isn't enough. Once you become aware of your anxious thoughts, you must also learn to change how you interpret them. This is where the practice of cognitive reframing comes in, a mental technique that teaches you to rewrite the stories in your head. Every anxious thought carries an underlying narrative. I'm not good enough. If I fail, it means I'm worthless. People will reject me if I make a mistake. These stories often go unquestioned, but they shape how you feel and act. Cognitive reframing allows you to challenge these automatic beliefs and replace them with more balanced, empowering perspectives. Imagine you make a small mistake at work and immediately think, I'm so stupid. I always mess things up. That's the old story, the anxious one. Cognitive reframing invites you to pause and ask, is that really true? Do I always mess things up? Or am I just human, learning like everyone else? You might reframe it as, I made a mistake, but it doesn't define me. I can fix it and do better next time. This simple shift in language changes everything. It transforms a thought that fuels shame into one that encourages growth. Reframing is not about lying to yourself or pretending everything is fine. It's about seeing situations with clarity rather than through the lens of fear. It's about stepping back and giving your mind new language that supports you instead of sabotaging you. Over time, this retrains your neural pathways. Your brain learns to look for solutions instead of problems, lessons instead of failures, opportunities instead of threats. Another powerful tool for clarity is journaling. Writing is therapy in motion. When your thoughts are tangled, writing them down gives them form and order. It's like pulling threads out of a knot. You begin to see what's really bothering you. Journaling helps externalize your inner world. What felt enormous in your head often looks manageable on paper. It slows down your thinking long enough for you to hear yourself clearly. There's no right or wrong way to journal. Some people write free-flowing thoughts. Others use prompts like, what am I feeling right now? Or what do I need to let go of today? You don't have to be eloquent or precise. The goal is release, not perfection. You can even practice brain dumping, where you write everything that comes to mind without stopping for grammar or structure. The point is to clear mental clutter and give your emotions a safe place to land. Journaling can also be used for cognitive reframing. Write down an anxious thought, then directly challenge it in writing. Underneath it, write a more grounded truth. Over time, you'll notice patterns, certain fears that repeat, certain words you use when you're stressed. Seeing those patterns gives you insight into your triggers, and awareness of your triggers gives you power. For moments when your mind feels like a storm and you need immediate calm, there's a simple technique called the 3-minute grounding routine. It's a quick, powerful way to reset your nervous system and bring yourself back to the present. Begin by closing your eyes and taking one slow, deep breath, filling your lungs completely, then exhaling slowly. Feel the air move through your body. Now bring your attention to your senses. Notice what you can hear around you, the hum of a fan, the sound of your breathing, the distant murmur of life happening beyond you. Then shift to touch. Feel your feet on the ground, your hands resting on your lap, the fabric of your clothes against your skin. Finally, open your eyes and notice something near you that brings calm, a color, a plant, a ray of light. What this does is anchor you to the present moment. It tells your body, I'm safe right now. The mind can only overthink when it's lost in the past or the future. Grounding brings it back to now. 3 minutes is all it takes to interrupt the cycle of panic and restore clarity. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you won't need to wait for chaos to use it. You'll carry calm with you wherever you go. Training your brain for clarity is not about erasing thoughts, but mastering your relationship with them. It's about learning to pause instead of react, to observe instead of absorb, to respond instead of resist. It's the daily discipline of creating space between you and your mind. Each mindful breath, each reframed thought, each page written in your journal strengthens that space. And within that space lies freedom. The freedom to think clearly, act intentionally, and live peacefully. Clarity is not found in a perfectly quiet mind, but in a mind that knows how to return to stillness no matter how loud it gets. It's not the absence of thoughts, but the ability to see them without being swept away. When you train your brain for clarity, you stop being a prisoner of your thoughts and start becoming their master. You begin to realize that peace was never about controlling your mind. It was about learning how to meet it with awareness, compassion, and calm. Chapter 6. Mastering Decisions and Action. For an overthinker, decision-making often feels like standing at a crossroads with 100 roads stretching endlessly into the horizon. Each road represents a possibility, some exciting, some terrifying, and your mind insists on exploring every single one before taking a single step. You replay outcomes, weigh consequences, and dissect details until you're too mentally exhausted to move at all. The irony is painful. The more you think about the right choice, the harder it becomes to make any choice. This is the silent torment of the overthinker, paralysis disguised as caution. The struggle begins with fear. Overthinkers are not indecisive because they lack intelligence. In fact, they often see too much. They can imagine every possible scenario, every risk, every variable that could go wrong. Their imagination, which should be a gift, becomes a prison. Fear of regret whispers that one wrong move could ruin everything. Fear of judgment says people will think less of you if you fail. Fear of the unknown tells you that not knowing is too dangerous to risk. So you keep thinking, as if one more round of analysis might deliver certainty. But certainty is an illusion, and the longer you chase it, the further away clarity feels. Every decision carries a degree of uncertainty, and the mind of an overthinker resists that truth. It seeks absolute assurance in a world that offers none. You want to guarantee that the job will be perfect before you accept it, that the person you love will never hurt you before you open your heart, that your creative project will succeed before you begin. But life doesn't deal in guarantees. It deals in experiences. Every decision is a step into the unknown, and the only way to discover what's right is to take the step. The overthinker's dilemma, then, is not a lack of options, but a lack of trust. Trust in themselves, in their instincts, and in their ability to handle whatever follows. Perfectionism often fuels this paralysis. You don't just want to make a good choice, you want to make the perfect one. You believe there's a single right decision and that every other choice is a failure waiting to happen. This kind of thinking breeds endless hesitation, because nothing ever feels perfect enough. The truth is, perfection is the enemy of progress. The world doesn't reward the perfect. It rewards the consistent, the courageous, the ones who act even when it's messy or uncertain. This is where the good enough principle becomes a lifeline. It's the idea that good enough is not a compromise. It's freedom. It's the permission to make a decision based on what's reasonable, not ideal. Good enough means you've done your best with what you have, where you are, and that's sufficient to move forward. The perfectionist mind equates good enough with mediocrity, but in reality, it's what allows progress to exist. Every great idea, business, or creation began as something imperfect that someone dared to start. Good enough gets you in motion. Perfection keeps you frozen. Think of it this way. Clarity rarely comes before action. It comes through action. You can't think your way into the perfect choice. You have to live your way into it. Sometimes, the only way to know whether something works is by trying it. The good enough mindset doesn't lower your standards. It releases you from the unrealistic expectation that you must have everything figured out before beginning. It teaches you to prioritize movement over mastery, direction over perfection. You can always adjust course once you're moving, but you can't steer a ship that's still anchored to the dock. To break the cycle of hesitation, there's a simple but powerful technique called the 3-second rule. It's based on the principle that hesitation feeds fear. The longer you wait between an impulse to act and the action itself, the louder the mind becomes. Those few seconds are where doubt breeds. The 3-second rule interrupts that process. The moment you feel the urge to do something, make a call, send a message, start a task, count down, 3, 2, 1, and move. Don't wait for the perfect mood or moment. The act of starting creates the right conditions. This method might sound trivial, but it retrains the brain. Each time you act within those 3 seconds, you reinforce a pattern of decisiveness. You teach yourself that you can trust your instincts. That action is safer than inaction. Over time, this builds momentum. Small actions compound into confidence, and confidence quiets overthinking. What begins as a mental trick becomes a lifestyle of movement and clarity. Fear doesn't disappear when you act. It transforms. You learn to see it differently. Fear isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's data. It's information about what matters to you, what challenges you, what excites you. When you feel fear before a decision, instead of asking, "What if this goes wrong?" ask, "What is this fear trying to tell me?" Maybe it's telling you that the decision matters. Maybe it's reminding you to prepare. Maybe it's showing you where growth lies. Fear, when interpreted correctly, becomes a compass instead of a cage. Approaching fear logically helps you take control of uncertainty. Write down the decision you're afraid of making. Then list the possible outcomes, not as dramatic what-ifs, but as probabilities. What's the worst-case scenario, the best-case scenario, and the most likely scenario? In most cases, the worst isn't nearly as catastrophic as your mind suggests. By converting fear into data, you strip it of emotional exaggeration and replace it with perspective. This method not only grounds you, but helps you make decisions based on reason, not panic. And if a decision doesn't turn out the way you hoped, that doesn't mean you failed. It means you learned. Every choice, right or wrong, reveals something valuable. Overthinkers tend to see decisions as permanent verdicts, but they're not. They're feedback. Life is iterative. You adjust, adapt, and evolve through experience. Each decision adds to your wisdom bank. Even when something doesn't go your way, it gives you clarity about what doesn't work, which brings you closer to what does. Learning from decisions instead of fearing them is how you build resilience. The more you decide, the more you learn to trust your inner compass. You begin to understand that you don't need to predict outcomes. You just need to be willing to face them. Every successful person, every confident leader, every fulfilled individual you admire has one thing in common. They act. They decide. They take imperfect steps and trust themselves to navigate whatever comes next. Making decisions with confidence doesn't mean you'll always be right. It means you'll always be moving. You'll always be learning, growing, and evolving. The goal is not to eliminate mistakes, but to remove the fear of them. Because in truth, there are no wrong decisions, only different paths leading to different lessons. When you stop waiting for the perfect choice, life starts to open up again. Opportunities begin to unfold, not because they suddenly appear, but because you're finally able to see and seize them. The fog of indecision clears, replaced by the light of movement. The more you act, the more your mind learns that it can survive uncertainty, recover from failure, and thrive in motion. Mastering decisions in action is mastering freedom. It's the moment you realize that life rewards the bold, not the hesitant. It's understanding that clarity is a result, not a prerequisite. It's choosing to live by progress, not perfection. And it's trusting that no matter which road you take, you'll find your way. Not because you knew it all along, but because you had the courage to walk it. Chapter 7. Rewiring Habits That Feed Overthinking. Overthinking is not just a mental problem. It's a lifestyle. It's a pattern that we unconsciously repeat through the habits we build, the environments we live in, and the routines we maintain. The mind doesn't operate in isolation. It's deeply connected to what you do, how you live, and what you allow into your daily rhythm. That means if you want to stop overthinking, you can't only focus on changing your thoughts. You must also change your habits. The brain is like a muscle. It grows stronger in the direction of whatever it's trained to do. If you constantly feed it chaos, stimulation, and uncertainty, it becomes wired for worry. But if you feed it focus, rest, and order, it becomes wired for calm. The first step in rewiring your mind is to break the cycle of mental busyness. Many people wear busyness like a badge of honor, confusing activity with productivity. But there's a big difference between the two. Busyness fills your schedule. Productivity fulfills your purpose. Mental busyness is when your mind never stops moving. It's planning the next thing while doing the current thing, and replaying the last thing all at once. You feel restless even when there's nothing urgent to do. The truth is, this kind of constant mental stimulation keeps your brain in a state of low-level panic. It's always anticipating, reacting, and preparing, which leaves no room for peace. Breaking that cycle requires intentional slowing down. It's about creating small moments of stillness throughout your day, pauses where your brain can breathe. You can start by doing one thing at a time. When you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. When you're talking to someone, be fully there. Multitasking may feel efficient, but it scatters your attention and drains your focus. The more you practice single tasking, the more your brain learns to stay anchored in the present. This presence is the antidote to mental busyness because overthinking thrives on mental clutter. Another powerful way to rewire your brain is through routines. Routines are not cages. They're anchors. They give your brain a sense of predictability and safety, which reduces the need for constant mental chatter. When you have consistent habits, like waking up and sleeping at the same time, eating balanced meals, or dedicating time for reflection, your brain spends less energy trying to decide what to do next. Decision fatigue is one of the biggest triggers for overthinking. A structured routine simplifies your mental load, freeing your mind to focus on what truly matters. Sleep is one of the most underrated yet essential tools for mental clarity. A tired brain is an anxious brain. When you don't get enough sleep, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning and emotional regulation, becomes sluggish, while the amygdala, the part responsible for fear, becomes overactive. The result? You worry more, react more, and think less clearly. Sleep isn't just rest, it's repair. It's the body's natural reset button for the mind. Good sleep hygiene, such as turning off screens an hour before bed, keeping your room dark and cool, and having a consistent bedtime, can significantly reduce overthinking. When the mind is rested, perspective returns. Equally important are digital boundaries. The world is louder than it has ever been, and we carry that noise in our pockets. Constant notifications, endless scrolling, and the bombardment of information keep the mind overstimulated. Every ping, post, or headline pulls your attention in 100 directions, leaving no mental space for peace. Your brain was never designed to process that much data in a single day. Without boundaries, the digital world hijacks your focus and keeps your nervous system in a constant state of alert. Setting digital boundaries doesn't mean cutting yourself off from technology. It means controlling how it interacts with you. Designate specific times to check your messages and social media. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Create no-screen zones, especially during meals and before sleep. Reclaiming your attention from your devices is one of the most powerful ways to reclaim your mind. Every time you choose silence over scrolling, you tell your brain that calm is more valuable than constant stimulation. Once you begin to quiet the external noise, the next step is to replace mental noise with focused attention. Overthinking thrives in distraction. Focus dissolves it. When your attention is directed intentionally, there's no room for spiraling thoughts to take over. Focus isn't just about concentration. It's about choosing what deserves your mental energy and letting go of what doesn't. You can cultivate focus through deliberate practices like deep work, mindfulness, or even hobbies that absorb you completely: gardening, painting, writing, playing an instrument. These moments of deep engagement train your brain to stay present and reduce the mental habit of drifting into worry. Focus is like a flashlight. When you point it purposefully, everything else fades into the background. Over time, this strengthens neural pathways associated with calm, clarity, and confidence. The mind and body are deeply intertwined. Your thoughts influence how your body feels, and your body influences how your mind thinks. When your body is tense, tired, or neglected, your thoughts follow suit. They become tight, reactive, and restless. That's why one of the most effective ways to calm your mind is through your body. Exercise, for example, isn't just about fitness. It's about regulation. Movement releases tension and produces chemicals like endorphins and serotonin that balance mood and reduce anxiety. Even a short walk can shift your mental state dramatically. Breathing is another bridge between body and mind. When you're anxious or overthinking, your breathing becomes shallow, which signals danger to your brain. Slowing your breath sends the opposite message. You're safe. Practices like deep diaphragmatic breathing or the 4-7-8 technique can help. The moment you bring awareness to your breath, your body relaxes and your thoughts begin to settle. This physiological reset is a reminder that peace doesn't always begin in the mind. It often begins in the body. Your emotions are also part of this system. Many overthinkers use thinking as a way to avoid feeling. Instead of allowing an emotion to move through naturally, you analyze it to death. You replay the situation that caused it, dissect your reactions, and search for logic where there is none. But emotions are not meant to be solved. They're meant to be felt. When you allow yourself to simply feel sadness, anger, or fear without judgment, those emotions pass more quickly. Suppressing them or intellectualizing them keeps them trapped, fueling more overthinking. Emotional release, whether through journaling, talking, or creative expression, clears the inner clutter that fuels mental chaos. Repetition and environment are powerful tools for reinforcing peace. The brain learns through repetition. What you do repeatedly, it begins to do automatically. That's why habits are so powerful. They rewire your default settings. If you want a calmer mind, build daily rituals that promote stillness and clarity. Meditate for 5 minutes each morning, practice gratitude at night, stretch before bed, take digital breaks throughout the day. At first, these may feel small or insignificant, but consistency is what changes the brain. Repetition teaches your mind that peace is familiar and safe. Your environment also shapes your thoughts more than you realize. A cluttered space often reflects a cluttered mind. When your surroundings are chaotic, your brain receives constant signals of disorder. Creating an environment that promotes calm, a tidy workspace, soft lighting, a plant, or a quiet corner for reflection, has a tangible impact on your mental state. The goal isn't perfection, but harmony. When your external space feels balanced, your internal world follows. Rewiring the habits that feed overthinking is not about doing more. It's about doing differently. It's choosing stillness over speed, depth over distraction, presence over panic. It's learning to slow down enough to let clarity catch up. Overthinking loses power in the face of grounded, consistent habits. Every time you choose to breathe instead of react, rest instead of ruminate, or act instead of analyze, you are literally rewiring your brain for peace. With time, these new patterns begin to replace the old ones. You wake up feeling calmer. You notice that thoughts come and go more easily. You stop needing to control everything because you've built a life that naturally supports calm. You stop overthinking not because your mind has changed overnight, but because you've changed the way you live. The brain follows the body, and the body follows the rhythm of your habits. When those rhythms are peaceful, your mind learns peace too. It stops fighting itself and begins to trust the flow of life. And in that trust, you discover what true clarity feels like. Not the absence of thought, but the presence of balance. Chapter 8. Living a mind that's finally free. Freedom doesn't always look like wide open spaces or endless possibilities. Sometimes, it looks like a quiet mind. It looks like waking up without the heaviness of yesterday's worries or tomorrow's expectations. It looks like being able to sit in silence without feeling restless, to make a decision without doubting yourself, and to be fully present in the moment you're in. A free mind is not one without thoughts. It's one that is no longer controlled by them. It's a mind that knows peace is not the absence of noise, but the ability to remain calm in the midst of it. The kind of peace that comes from acceptance and present awareness is unlike anything that external success or validation can provide. Acceptance is not passive resignation. It's the deep, mature understanding that life unfolds in ways we can't always predict or control. When you learn to accept what is, without wishing it were different, you remove the resistance that creates suffering. Acceptance doesn't mean you stop striving or caring. It means you stop fighting against reality. You begin to meet life as it is, not as your fears or fantasies imagine it should be. Present awareness is the natural companion of acceptance. It's the practice of bringing your full attention to the moment you're living right now. The mind loves to wander between the past and the future, analyzing what has been and anticipating what might come. But clarity, healing, and peace only exist here in the now. When you truly inhabit the present, you realize that most of your worries are mental projections, not actual experiences. The present moment is usually bearable, even beautiful. It's the mind's stories about what's next that make it unbearable. Living in awareness transforms ordinary moments into sacred experiences. Washing dishes becomes a form of meditation. Listening to someone becomes an act of love. You start noticing details you once ignored. The warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your breathing, the sound of your own laughter. The world slows down. You no longer live as though life is something you have to chase. You begin to live as though it's something you are constantly meeting. To sustain this kind of mental peace, you must build a life that supports calm thinking. The mind reflects the environment it lives in. If your daily life is filled with chaos, noise, and clutter, emotional or physical, your thoughts will mirror that disorder. But if your life is structured with care, balance, and simplicity, your mind will naturally follow. This begins with the choices you make every day, the people you allow into your space, the content you consume, the pace at which you live, and the habits you repeat. A life that supports calm thinking is one where you design your surroundings intentionally. Create spaces that soothe you instead of overstimulate you. Keep your mornings slow, unrushed, and sacred. Let your evenings be a time to unwind, not to scroll endlessly through other people's lives. Protect your mental environment as fiercely as you would protect your home, because your mind is your home. Be selective about what you feed it. What you listen to, read, and engage with becomes the raw material for your thoughts. Choose peace over noise, truth over gossip, depth over distraction. Part of maintaining a free and peaceful mind involves practicing daily mental hygiene. Just as you shower to keep your body clean, you need rituals that keep your mind uncluttered. Mental hygiene doesn't have to be complicated. It's about small, consistent acts that prevent your thoughts from piling up into chaos. One powerful practice is the morning reset. A few minutes of silence or meditation before checking your phone or facing the world. This helps you begin the day grounded rather than reactive. Throughout the day, mental hygiene looks like taking mini breaks to breathe deeply, stretch, or step outside. It means giving yourself permission to rest when your mind feels overloaded, rather than pushing through exhaustion. In the evening, it might involve journaling to release the day's thoughts before bed. Writing down what's on your mind clears mental residue, so it doesn't carry into tomorrow. These small rituals signal to your brain that it's safe to relax. Over time, your mind begins to associate calmness with safety, and that shift alone changes everything. Resilience is born out of this kind of daily care. A calm mind doesn't mean an unshakable life. It means you recover faster when things shake. You learn to bend without breaking. Challenges no longer send you into spirals of self-doubt or fear. Instead, you face them with grounded clarity. You begin to trust yourself, not because you have all the answers, but because you know you can handle whatever comes. Perhaps the greatest sign of a mind that's finally free is the ability to become your own observer. This is the point where you stop being consumed by your thoughts and start watching them with distance and curiosity. You see the patterns forming, the worry that always appears before an important event, the inner critic that tries to protect you by predicting failure, the habit of replaying conversations long after they've ended. You recognize these patterns not as who you are, but as what your mind does. Being your own observer is an act of empowerment. It's stepping out of the storm to watch it instead of being swept away by it. You begin to see that thoughts are not facts. They're passing weather. Some days bring storms of self-doubt. Others bring breezes of inspiration. Both pass. The observer in you remains steady and untouched. From that vantage point, you can respond to life with intention rather than reaction. You become calm, not because everything around you is calm, but because you found a place within yourself that nothing can disturb. To help anchor this state of awareness, it helps to practice a guided plan, a structured week of mental training that rewires your relationship with thought. Think of it as a 7-day recalibration for your mind, a bridge from constant mental noise to quiet presence. On the first day, the focus is awareness. Spend time simply observing your thoughts. Don't judge them or try to stop them. Just notice. When you catch yourself overthinking, say, "I'm thinking." That one phrase brings consciousness into the process. On the second day, practice acceptance. Instead of fighting unwanted emotions, allow them to exist. If anxiety arises, acknowledge it with compassion. Remind yourself that emotions are waves. They rise and fall on their own. The third day is about decluttering. Reduce external noise. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Take a social media break and spend time in quiet reflection. The less information you take in, the clearer your inner world becomes. Day 4 is for grounding. Practice deep breathing or the 3-minute grounding exercise you learned earlier. Reconnect with your body through movement or nature. The body anchors the mind in the present moment. The 5th day focuses on reframing. When anxious thoughts appear, challenge them. Replace "what if it all goes wrong" with "what if it all turns out better than I imagined?" This simple shift changes your emotional tone. Day 6 is about expression. Write down what's been weighing on your mind. Release it through words, art, or prayer. The act of expressing clears emotional residue and makes room for peace. Finally, on the 7th day, practice gratitude and reflection. Spend time noticing what went right, what felt peaceful, and how far you've come. Gratitude trains the brain to focus on sufficiency rather than lack. It rewires you to see life through the lens of abundance instead of anxiety. By the end of these 7 days, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. You start to notice more space between your thoughts. The noise softens. The need to control everything weakens. You feel more connected to yourself and to life. You begin to realize that overthinking was never your natural state. It was just a habit, one that you now have the tools to replace with awareness, presence, and peace. Living a mind that's finally free doesn't mean you'll never overthink again. It means that when those old habits appear, you'll meet them with understanding instead of fear. You'll know how to breathe through them, observe them, and let them pass. You'll stop chasing peace and start living it, moment by moment, thought by thought. This is what freedom feels like. Not a perfect mind, but a peaceful one. A mind that doesn't cling, doesn't resist, doesn't drown in its own stories. A mind that trusts life enough to be here, now, fully and freely. And in that stillness and that surrender, you discover that peace was never something you had to find. It was what you were all along.